Hi, and welcome back. In the last video, we talked about how you can create a Rust HTTP server, right, using the Axum framework. In this video, I want to take it a step further to show how you can manage your application secret, right? So, what I want to do is that rather than starting from the ground up, I'm going to duplicate what was done previously, right? So this is going to be an extension of what was discussed in that video, right? And I want to call it secret, right? That would also mean I'm renaming these dudes, and my lib over here. All right, so that works. And all right, so that works. It's essentially as the same thing with what we had here previously. So just a couple of renaming here, there, and everywhere, and we here. Really, so what I like to do is that for this demonstration there are going to be two environment variables. The first one is going to be the application port, this dude over here, that is just static. I want to be able to read it from the environment. And the other thing is a database URL. For demonstration purpose, of course, we are not hooking up database in this application. So I want to create all right, so I already have this ignored over here, yeah. And then my dot port, I want to keep my port as 4000, and then my database URL, suppose I'm using Postgres, this would be username, password at 5432, I believe, slash database name. All right, so that works, and I'm just gonna copy this guy over here, and that's just, these are the environment. So what I want to do now is make this usable inside of my application. So instead of 4000, I'm using the reading from the environment and using that here. Now really, typically what I like to do is to use a just file. Now the just file is going to run my application with a just file. Of course, in development environment, it is going to expose those secrets, and I can write a parser that reads these values into a struct. Right, let me start with that struct. At the end of the day, this is a number and this is a string, right? So I'm going to call something config. So I'm calling that config, and what I want to do is I want to call it app config, really. And then yeah, U16. How do we know that this is a U16? This is because it's specified here to be a U16. Yeah, over here the port is a U16, right? And then I have my database URL. So what I want to do is I want to create a method for app config that reads those data from the env. So that would be an implementation block pub from env, right? And then this return self, or app error, right? So we'll come back to few of these. But before we get there, we just want to initially what we had is just the startup error from the previous video. We want to extend this to take config error, like couldn't read this key because of this reason, right? So that would be something like error failed to read the key due to this reason. All right, that works. So that would be config error, yeah, and that works. And yeah, I want to expose this config right here. So yeah, we're back to this dude, yeah. That would be alright. So we're saying let okay, before we plunge into this, what I like to do is I can go all the way, say std let port equals std env oops var, and then read that key, say port this time, and then read it, do all the reading, and then again do stdenv. But this is a u16 and this is a string. I might have something that is another thing entirely, right? So what I like to do is that I like to use an helper that reads this data, um reads this data, pass it into the target type, and then I just call that helper, make the function call here, and populate the struct field, right? So yeah, I'm going to leave this as is, then come back to fill it after creating the helper. So call it helper.rs, right? um I'm going to call it extract env really, because that's what it does. Extract t rct env, and then it takes a key, oops, and then it returns a result of, now this suggestion would have been correct otherwise, but I have different types. My type can be a u16 or a string, as we have seen. So I'm gonna take this out and just call it a t, make this a generic function, right? So that works. And what do I want to do? I also want to add these two. All right, so let's come back and fill this out. Okay, env, so I'm reading the env, then I'm passing it to the target type, and that's really it. So std env var, I have the key. Now this is a failable operation. It's very possible for it to fail, so we're returning a result, right? Exactly. So I can map the error. I have the error, and then app error from config error, the key, and then the error. All right, and that works, right? Okay, this takes to string. All right, so I have the env, so the data is being extracted. So I get a string at the end of the day from doing this. And the other thing I want to do is I want to parse this into that target type, right? So I get env something like this. That's about correct, but it's not totally correct. Okay. Now for parse, for us to use parse must implement the from string function. So I need to from string trait. All right. So that works, and this is going to fail. Why? Because we are expecting the trait. The trait bound is not satisfied. Right. So this very trait isn't satisfied. So this is what I like to do. Then make this use debug, and then I can come here and just debug print it. Error, and then that should work, right? All right, so I'm then cargo watch again. That brings us back to this config.rs. So now I can call this function, this helper, extract env, that extracts the data, and then it parses it for me, right? Yeah, or maybe I want to say that to differentiate the error, I can say this is fail to read, and maybe fail to config read, and config parse error. But I feel at the end of the day it's just the same thing. So read or parse doesn't matter in the long run. It's just it tells us what is wrong because we get the error message. So rather than having config read and config parse, so I'm just gonna leave it as is, right? So yeah, I want to read the port and the database URL from the env. So I'm gonna do something like let port equals that works. So I need to import this. So this is here already, and then okay, self. All right, so that works. All right, and then in my main.rs I can do equals to, yeah, that's correct too. All right, so yeah, let's debug this and see what we get, right? App config moment of truth. Oh, sure, debug, derive the bug for that, and yeah, part environment variable not found. So what I like to do really, especially in development environment, is that I like to use a just file. So just file would expose those environments from my env file into my server environment, so I can skip using .env, right? Okay, so this is what I have in just file. A couple of commands. I can say set .env file equals to .env, oops, and then set .env required. Now, without this, the server is not gonna start up, right? So I can do set export. All right. Am I missing anything? This takes true. All right. That's env required. The file name and okay, set that env load. I believe. Yeah, this takes true. All right. So those are the four major configurations, and instead of doing cargo watch, I want to hide it behind a just recipe. Say call it dev, so I can do cargo watch QCX run. Right. So instead of this, what I can do is, all right. So I have my config exposed, right, and then I can use this conveniently. And really, that just works. But yeah, there's a problem. Now it's not so safe. It's not secure to just dump secret here in the server logs, right? And what we can do in that case is that we can use a crate called secrecy to hide this. So even if you debug print this by mistake or intentionally, it's not gonna print the secret out, right? And that's what I want to do here. Secrecy, I believe it's called. All right, good. So I'm going to change this from a string to a secret string, right? And then now this is not gonna be a string anymore, so I need to convert it to a secret string from, yep. So that works. So now it's redacted. And what if I need the secret, right? So I can do the database URL dot export secret. Yeah, otherwise it's going to remain hidden, and that just works. So with this I can just delete that. So so far we added a just file that exposed this, and then a struct, so we can always come back here to add a couple of more secret, and then we have our helper that can always be used to extract secret from the environment and pass it into the target type. And yep, that's as simple as it gets, and I'll see you in the next one.